Hey, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Career to Coach Spotlight. And so excited to have you guys here today and on this journey. And so I'm hoping that you've had a chance to check out some of the other spotlights. And so I'm so excited to be able to share this young lady with you today. So I've had the pleasure of working with Este, and so she has a phenomenal journey, and so I'm excited to share for her to share her journey with you. And so the whole purpose of this spotlight is just so you can see that each person that goes into the coaching industry they have their own journey, they have their own way of how they kind of come into coaching. And then, but that you may notice, especially if you start to listen to some of these spotlights, that a lot of people have some of the same challenges, or some of the same mindset shifts that they have to make. And so I know you'll find some inspiration from her journey and how she got here, but I don't want to waste any more time. I want you to have a chance to hear from her. So, guys, please welcome Este Cann to today's Career to Coach Spotlight. So, welcome, Este. Thanks for being here. So
Thank you
awesome
so
to speak
much.
again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So been loving seeing all your beautiful photos and the traveling you've been doing and all those things that you have on your social media. So that's so exciting. But yeah. So I mean, like I said, we'll just jump right in. But I would love to just for you to just share with the community, like, your background and how did you even get into the coaching industry? Like, what was that journey like for you?
Okay, so my background is I was born and raised in communist socialist Hungary um, by a single mom. So the odds were really stacked against me in life, and it was a tough way to grow up. And the main thing that I saw, and then of course, Hungary changed from communism to democracy in 1990. So then I also grew up in more of a democratic capitalist system after that. So I had, both of those experiences. But what was the same about both worlds um, is that I saw that people were not the masters of their destiny, that there was no freedom. There was no freedom in communism, certainly. But then later on, in the job culture, because that's how I grew up, the way that I think most of us grow up in the Western world is a job culture,
Mm-hmm.
where we learn from our parents and we learn from the society that we trade time for money, and that's the way to make money, right? And then I tried to respect society's rules and play by them. And I went to university and I studied philosophy, and I got a job, and I was faced with the truth that most people in jobs were also not the masters of their destiny. They didn't have the freedom and the power to actually live a life and create a life that they truly love.
Mm-hmm.
So from a very young age, because of these reasons, I was hell bent on figuring out how reality works. How does it work to be a human being, and how to manifest or create the life that I absolutely just love.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hell bent on figuring out how manifestation works, and to become the master of my destiny.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of my background. There is of course a lot more, but I'll leave it at that for the time being. And how I the other your other questions, how I got into coaching, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so before I go into that, here at this point, I just would like to say to anybody who is listening that so I went from being born and raised in communist Hungary with a single mom in the middle of nowhere to now running my own coaching business in the United Kingdom. And so if you can imagine how difficult, how big the jump between those two things are, if I can manifest this, then literally anyone can manifest anything that they want. So, so what happened is that how did I get into coaching? How did I get into coaching even? Um, at some point, I decided to move to London And like I say, I was always interested in personal development and especially manifestation. And like literally from age probably 10, 11, I was already reading books on manifestation and spirituality and personal development.
Wow.
And then I moved to London, and my interest in personal development did not diminish in all those years, even though I was occupied with doing other things. But so 1 year later, so I moved to London in 2011, and in 2012, I started going to personal development courses. And as I was doing these courses, there was an opportunity to volunteer. And in return for volunteering, they would train me how to be a coach.
Nice.
So I did that for maybe a year or so. And in the meantime, while I was doing volunteer coaching in return for being trained how to be an amazing coach, then I did a couple of their leadership courses. Now, I must say that at this point, I was very new in London, and I was in really crappy jobs that had nothing to do with me or my gifts or what I wanted my life to be. And I was doing these crappy jobs just to make ends meet. Like, think like I was front of house in a burger joint, and I was, similar jobs like that, like in hospitality and shop floor sales assistant, things like this. So also, I never had the money for these courses, and so I always took the payment plans, the payment options.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only way I could afford them. But I was so interested because what they told me, this was the first thing that I think the biggest thing that had me move more into this journey was that they said, have a bigger context. And if you have a bigger context, then kind of the rest of your life will sort itself out. Create a bigger context. And so the big context for my life that I created, which is still the same, even after all these years, even after 12 years, it's still the same. So this big context I created was that I want to live in a world, and therefore I want to be instrumental in creating a world where everybody gets to live a life they love, where everybody gets to create their dream life. Every single human being, nobody left out, nobody left behind. That where everybody literally lives a life that they just truly, truly love. Because imagine a world like that, where we would have a world full of absolutely, completely fulfilled, happy people, where they actually live a life that they love, and everybody in their own soul purpose and soul mission, everybody working on their own cosmic puzzle piece, if you will. So everybody is in their soul mission, right? Everybody is in their correct places in life, and everybody is fulfilled and happy. This is my dream. This is my dream of the world. So this is what I created then. And so as I was doing these leadership courses, I think I did two. And then meantime, I was volunteering, coaching, and meantime, I was doing these crappy jobs. And the meantime, I was also doing, on the side of my crappy jobs, I also was doing creative businesses, which just were not really going anywhere. And eventually, this company reached out to me. They said, "Will you please work for us? We think you'd be great for this." And it was a big, huge management and leadership role. And that was, I think, the biggest job in like a corporate-like structure that I was ever offered. And it was really a big job, a big deal. And I said yes. And I never looked back. And so in this job, I was in this job for about 3 years. And of course, I got to hone and develop my coaching skills even more, because part of my job was, of course, coaching people. And I counted one time that I I had over 2,000 coaching conversations. I spent over 10,000 hours coaching in that job because I was doing 70 hours per week.
Yeah.
And that was not only coaching, also management and leadership stuff. And obviously I had the best coaches because I was working for a coaching company, and
Yeah, that's awesome.
you know, they were just pretty exceptional. It was, and that job and that coaching, the particular way of the way they coach. So this company is it still exists, an international personal and professional coaching and development company. It's a multinational. They are all over the world. And working for them and being coached to be a high performance coach, to me it was like going to spiritual military. It was tough, but it was amazing. And so after that, I actually had a big, huge burnout. Like, I did this job for like about 3 years, and 70 hours a week of this for
Yeah.
3 years. Towards the end of it, I noticed that, I started to have all kinds of problems with my body, and especially that my nervous system was absolutely gone and burned out. So, it wasn't the correct way for me personally. There's a lot of people for whom this is amazing and they can do it, and there's a lot of people who work for this company for years and years, like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. But for me it wasn't the right way. So anyway, so I had this huge burnout, and it was very difficult. After that, I started living off of credit cards and sofa surfing, and eventually, and I just couldn't bring myself back from the burnout, and eventually I became homeless. And then the next level of my development unfolded, which was I met a multimillionaire, self-made multimillionaire, in that time of my life where I was homeless. And I was so lucky to meet her. And she said to me, Este, it's all thinking and manifestation, but the main thing is that you have to just stop and stop resisting your circumstances, stop resisting what's so, and surrender and meditate. And that was completely counterintuitive to me, obviously, because I was, every fiber in my body, every cell of me wanted to fix my situation. I wanted to fix that situation. I wanted to get out of it as soon as possible. But like, I took all these actions and I was trying to get out, I was trying to think myself out of it, and nothing I did worked. Literally nothing I did worked for about like a few months. Never mind, the whole time was about 6 months while I was homeless. And then inside of that time, I met this person, and at some point, I can't remember exactly when, but yeah, so that was completely counterintuitive to just stop and meditate. And but I did, because at that point I had nothing to lose, and this completely changed my life. And I started, so within a very short few months, like, just everything turned around. Like, I had a place to live. I could completely afford it. I had these jobs coming to me, and those jobs were inside of my creative business that I was pursuing at that time. And within 1 year, I moved to my favorite place in the entire United Kingdom, and I still live there now. And then I started traveling the world, and I traveled the world for like 3 years, almost nonstop. And that was just recently. And while this was happening, I was like, okay, this is amazing. Like, I just manifest miracles like this. Like, just manifest stuff out of thin air, like not even having the resources, and it's just amazing synchronicity happens, and I get to do these amazing things in my life, especially the travel, which at that point I was completely resigned of it, because I thought, I had to have the resources for it, and I had to have the base and the house and the career and the all of that first, and then I could travel. But it didn't happen like that at all. It was just amazing synchronicity, the way that the way that I got to travel so much. And so I was doing these amazing things, and all that time it was like, okay, but why am I doing this? Why is this happening to me? It's great, I love it, but why? And so then I had to return to that context that I created of the why. And I just, for 3 years, I just couldn't put it together that, okay, this is happening with me, but then this is my context, but who am I inside of this? Because obviously, like, the homeless phase was a huge spiritual wake up. I went through the dark night of my soul, and so it was a complete identity change, and I was kind of like in that space of, okay, but who am I? Well, what is this whole thing called my life for? What is my life for? And so then in the meantime I spent about almost a year in therapy, and therapy was what helped me to actually let go of the biggest limiting belief that I had, which stopped me forever from actually stepping into who I always knew I was. And this is so crazy, because it's like, now looking back, I know that probably from the age of, I think I was even younger than like 10, 11. I remember, I think I was around 10 years old. Yeah. And I remember clearly this moment around 10 years old. I have this, I remember writing down, like writing into a diary, and then telling my mom that I want to write a book about love. And I thought at 10 years old, I thought I know exactly what love is and what love isn't. And I was like, I want to write a book about love, but I'm not going to write it just yet because I'm 10 years old. Who would listen to me? Right. And then just looking back to that moment, I know that already then I knew I wanted to be some kind of a spiritual teacher or coach, or, helping with the consciousness of the planet Earth in some way, shape, or form. And that was so clear to me then. But then I did all these other things. And the biggest limiting, and so, like, I did that coaching job, but then I left and I did all of these other creative businesses and all of that. But all of that time, in the very back of my mind, I always had this same thing, that I am a spiritual teacher of some sort, or a coach, or, someone who in some way would like to contribute to elevating the consciousness of this planet and helping people to create the lives that they want, and just to have more love on this planet, really, starting with ourselves. And but I just couldn't step into that until I was in therapy, and I worked with this huge limiting belief, which was that I thought that I couldn't do this because who would listen to me, because who am I to talk about these things? This was literally what I thought. Who am I to talk about these things? Like, who am I to write any kind of book about this? Like, my life is not perfect. I am not sorted. I'm not some kind of enlightened being or nothing. Like, my life is all over the place. It was so because of that, I thought I was not credible to talk about these things, to teach about these things. And also I thought that I'm too ordinary, like I'm nothing special. So therefore, who would listen to me? Because I'm just too ordinary. Why would anyone listen to someone who's too ordinary? But it's like really hard to even say this now, because that belief was changed so completely. So in therapy, I created this completely new belief around that, which is that, well, what if ordinary is the extraordinary? What if ordinary can be the extraordinary? What if ordinary is the extraordinary? And then what if people relate to someone like me, who's not perfect and completely human, more than they would relate to a completely enlightened, perfect being who's just like, or who's on the road, just like them,
yeah,
on the path? What if people would relate to someone like this more? And this was what like freed me and cracked me out of that old way of being of, who am I to talk about this and la la la. And so I decided, this was last year, right? We are talking about 2023 summer. I'm still in a full-time job, and I hate it. Yeah. because it's just, I just do it for the money, and it has nothing to do with my gift to the world. I just was so not self-expressed. My energy was being used in the completely incorrect way. And so in July, I think by the time I worked out this belief thing, that was a spring, early summer. And so in July, I remember very clearly, in July, there was this point where I was like, okay, that's enough. This is it. Like, I'm done with that. Never having the money, never having the time, that poverty consciousness, and being in these jobs that have nothing to do with my gifts and who I am for the world, and nothing to do with my greater context. And I just decided, okay, this is it. I'm done with that. How I'm gonna get out of this, how I'm gonna change this, I have no idea. But so I always wanted to write this book, and then there was like several book ideas throughout my life. And so I just happened to had this latest book idea for like 2 years. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book. And the working title is, because I'm still working on it, the working title is How to Manifest Miracles, because I manifested amazing miracles throughout my life. And I thought, okay, so I have not made 7 figures, but I have manifested really amazing miracles. And I would love to share with people, like, how did I come to that maybe somebody can learn from my experience of when I figured out how manifesting miracles works. And from that time of, turning my life around just by meditating. I mean, that's just, so I wanted to write about the inside of that. What does it take to have that happen? And, going from homeless to traveling the world, and homeless to living in my favorite location in the United Kingdom, which is a super magical, really amazing place. Like really super, it's the most amazing, most magical place in the entire United Kingdom. Famous magical place. Anyway, so manifesting all these miracles, right? I wanted to share that. So I start writing this book, right? I decide, okay, I'm done. This is it. What can I do? I'm still in this full-time job. What can I do now with what I have? Exactly. So I start writing this book. This is July, right? And in July, I decide I'm going to jump into my ideal timeline. I'm going to jump into my highest timeline, which is to be the fullest expression of who I am, to be expressed as my higher self in this reality, in this lifetime, to be completely self-realized. And that to me would have meant something about coaching and doing this and sharing this book. And so as I wrote the skeleton of the book, I realized, oh my God, I have a course here. Wow. So I had the chapters, and I'm like, I could really easily make an online course from this book. And so I was like, okay, right. So this is what I'm gonna do. So it started coming to me. Okay, right. This is what I'm gonna do. Then in June, July, I already knew that job had to end because it was not great. And but I was really scared of what would happen if I just quit. How am I going to survive? And I don't recommend this to anyone. I do not recommend. What I do recommend is do the part of what I did of having a job and start working on something else. That's what I do recommend. Leaving, I do not recommend. but eventually that's what I did with like no foundation. And again, I don't recommend this, but that's what I did. But anyway, so July, I decide I'm going to jump into my highest timeline, which is to be completely self-realized. And in August, in August was the 8/8, the Lionsgate portal, which we just came through. It's the 8/8, the 8th day of the 8th month, the 8th of August. And I said, okay, that's a portal date. I'm going to use that portal date to use that portal to literally go into my highest timeline. And I decided I'm going to be back to my magical location by the 8th of August. And I'm going to jump timelines, whether I finish that job or not. I'm just going to jump timelines, happens what happens. So I came back to this magical location in Glastonbury. Yeah, no, I said it. So it's in Glastonbury, United Kingdom. So I came back to magical Glastonbury on the 8/8 on the Lionsgate portal last year, 2023. And it was, again, that was also absolute synchronicity, the way that I managed to get here for that. And I did a little, it really was just an intention setting. And I visited some of the most magical locations within Glastonbury, and I got on with work and writing my book. And then in the meantime, both my employer as well as myself decided this is not good, that I have to end this job. So I left the job. So I was there without a job and plenty of time. And so I was like, ready to go, fired up, ready to go, to do this online course and start coaching people about how to manifest things, and specifically how to manifest miracles, how to put yourself into a mindset, really, as well as like a bodily state, to be a space where miracles get to unfold. And and so this is August, right? This is August. And 1 month later, I find out about this coaching method called the magnetic mind method. And so I do a free challenge with magnetic mind method. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been doing, but it has some of the missing bits of what I didn't understand exactly what I was doing. So I was already doing it, but here was someone who was explaining what I was doing. Gotcha. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? And then I get an email from them just a week later saying, birthday giveaway. Was it? Doesn't matter the timing. It was more than a week later. But there's this email, there's a birthday giveaway, and you can win a $20,000 1-year business and coaching certification course. And I'm like, okay, like without thinking, filling out the application form. And the prize draw was on the 24th of September. Never forget that day. Never forget that day, 24th of September, 2023. I won out of something like 2,000 entries. And that was like I never won anything in my life before that. So that was like that. I don't even know how to explain that moment. That day was like, okay, this is it. Like, this is literally, okay, I already drew the sand in the line in the sand a month prior. But then this happens. And I'm like, okay, this is it now. This is it now. Like, this is my big break. This is my big break. I have to use this opportunity to, as best I can, to actually move into that highest timeline. And so that's what I did. I just decided, okay, so what do I do now? So, and then I started sharing my journey. Just that's all I did. I just was like, this is so amazing. This is just so amazing. I just have to share this journey. Just simply sharing the journey. That's all. Sharing what happens and what I'm learning. And So I started sharing my journey on Facebook, and I started sharing about what I was learning in the course that I won
Yeah.
also. And just from that, I got 2, 3 clients like straight away.
Nice.
And I made about $10,000 in my first 1.5 months.
Okay, that's exciting. Man, that's a amazing story. Like, I mean, there's so many. I took a couple of notes. I was like, man, she said that, and then I mean, so many things that I think that aspiring, that the person that's wanting to transition to coaching and trying to like kind of on the fence, because I mean, you talked about how you did the traditional right on that route, and that's one reason. Sorry, I got messages popping up and sitting on my saying, but yeah, I mean that was one of the reasons that I wanted to go into coaching, right? Just because it's like we're taught the traditional route: go to school, get a good education, get a good job, and so, but many times, I mean, honestly, I don't know what the stats are there where you are, but I mean, many people don't even end up working in the industry that they go to school for. So you go to school, you get this education, and you end up getting a job in a completely different industry, right? And then sometimes you're like me. I did the just shy of 8 years when you add up undergrad and master's degree, and then and it's a good career to an extent, but then you realize it's not what you thought it was going to be, right? And I think that's even just I think that's even just amazing shift that when you even are willing to like say, hey, this isn't, because I know you even mentioned like I try to write it down. Shoot, did I write? But you talked about like that larger context and just realizing that you were meant for more, and that there was something else that you were supposed to be doing. I mean, and maybe at that point you didn't know what it was yet, but just that but that there was something inside of you that was pulling you to something bigger, even though you had done that traditional route. And sometimes we have to do the traditional route to realize like, hey, this isn't for us, right? And so yeah, I just think that's so awesome. And I know you didn't really even get the chance to share some of your challenges, kind of growing up, coming from a communist society into more democratic. But I know we've talked about that on one of our other calls. But I would just say, just even some of the mindset shifts you personally had to overcome, because when you come from a communist society and everything's kind of like given to you, you're kind of told what to do, and then you have to kind of break out and be that more independent thinker, and kind of that proactive thinker. And so you had the courage to go on your own journey, to figure it out, to be able to just go, figure out what it is that you wanted to, that you had that vision as a child, like, how am I going to make this happen? And like I said, I know we won't be able to go probably as in deep in this session just because of the time, but yeah, your story is so powerful, and just how that I don't know if I want to say persistence, or that just determination to go after this vision that you saw for yourself, and just figuring out how to make it happen despite being raised in a community that probably was telling you like, what do you think? And I think you were even telling me at one point, they were telling you like, you're kind of, you're dreaming, like it's never going to happen, like that kind of thing. And I think that's another challenge that a lot of us, when we're wanting to make this transition, because a lot of our friends and family reality, they're not business oriented. They're not, their mindset isn't around business. And so when you start talking about, oh, I want to start a coaching business, or I want to go do something that's outside of the traditional thing that we're taught, then, I think they mean well, but I think sometimes they're trying to help us, in a sense, but they don't realize that we have a different vision. And there was a guy, I don't know if you've heard of Trent Shelton, but I think he's a part of like Dean Graziosi's group or organization. I heard him talk on stage one time, and he talked about, I can't, and I'm probably gonna mess up the story, but basically he was talking about in the sense that he and his wife were having a conversation, and I don't remember which one was wearing glasses, but one of them wears glasses, right? And so the other, so like say he's the one that wears the glasses, and so wife takes the glasses and she puts it over her eyes, and she's like, I can't see out of it, I can't see anything. He was like, yeah, because the vision's not for you, right? And so I think that's one of the big things that really like just like shook me, like, man, like, because we can see our vision for our life, in that, like you said, you had this bigger context even as a child, on where you saw your life going. You didn't really know how it was going to get there, but you saw that vision. And so I think sometimes the people that we love the most, they don't see that vision because they can't see inside of us. And so I just think that's so powerful, and just kind of helping people understand, like, it's okay that you have your own vision. It's okay that the people around you may not understand it. And I think one of the biggest things that I had to realize is I had to get around other people who had similar visions. So other coaches, other communities, people that were already on that journey, so that, because again, it's like you, in another talk that I heard, they talked about kind of having like two hands. Like, you got your friends and family over here, and then you got your community that's on the same path. And so it doesn't mean we don't love our family and our friends any less, but it does mean that we understand what we can get from them. And so if they don't understand the business side of things, and they're not on that same journey, then we can't expect them to understand like our journey. But we can get around people that do, and that's going to support us, and it's going to give us the motivation, the inspiration, the resources, the tools that we need on the, in that pursuit. So I said, it was just so many things you said. I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to touch on all these things, but yeah, just so many things. Like I said, just, and even like I said, just that whole, and the mindset, like you said, is anybody going to listen to me? Do I have any value to put out there? And the reality is that you do. And even before we jumped on this call, you're like, I don't know if my story is going to be valuable. It's like, of course it is. Like, we all have our own journey. We all have, and I think that's, like you said, we say the ordinary, right? I think that's the challenge, is that because we all look at ourselves and we're like, oh, I'm just average, I'm ordinary, nobody's gonna listen to me, like I don't have any value to add. I think it's sometimes it takes somebody else saying, yeah, you do. You have a powerful story, just to be able to tell. And so yes, I just that's so awesome. And I hope people that are listening were able to pull that out, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges when making that shift from going from a career oriented person to coaching, business in general, it's a shift. It's a shift in identity, like you mentioned too, in going from like, hey, I'm going to create my own, I'm going to create and manifest, as you would say, right, my life. I'm going to create what I want. And I'm not going to sit around and wait for, and that was, again, one of my burns. Like, I didn't want people determining like how much I made on my job. I didn't want people determining my freedom, my time, and so, but being able to create, knowing that, I mean, I can actually create the vision that I want. This vision that I'm seeing, it wasn't given to me, just because, right? There's a reason that I'll have that vision, but being willing to step outside my comfort zone and pursue it is so awesome. And so, like I said, man, like I said, I was taking notes, but I can't remember. And even just experience, right? So you talked about how, and it wasn't even like that was part of like you manifesting this kind of just those steps. And I think that's another thing too, is for people to understand, like, sometimes you don't know what that path, you see the mountaintop, and you see yourself down here in the valley, and you're like, man, that seems so huge. I don't know how I'm ever going to get there. And I think sometimes we forget the fact that it's just taking that next step. So yeah, you have that bigger vision, but like, what's the next step? What's that next step that you didn't take? Maybe that next step is finding a community. Maybe that next step is, like you said, you were able to find a mentor or somebody that could kind of give you some guidance. Maybe that next step is just starting to do some research, but just understanding, like, yeah, it seems like a big leap, but as you take steps, you're going to start moving on that journey. But I think sometimes, in general, we as humans, we get stuck because we just see this big vision or this big goal, and we're like, man, I just don't know how I'm gonna do it. It doesn't seem like it can actually happen. But when we're willing to take those small steps, then eventually over time, we look back and like, man, hey, I actually accomplished some stuff. I actually did something. And so I think that, like I said, that was just something I pulled out too. Is just like being able that you were just taking those steps. And like I said, even when you said you drew the line in the sand, because you drew the line in the sand, and that's what I would call making a decision, right? You made a decision that you were going to figure out a way. And a lot of times they say, like, when you make that decision, the teacher will come, or the resource will come, or whatever you need will show up. And so I think that was just a powerful, representation of what that was. You made a decision, and then a month later you win a program to be able to help you, learn the skill sets that you need to do that. And even too, I think another thing too is that you mentioned is you were your job. So it may not always look exactly how we think it's going to look either. So initially you mentioned that, yeah, that job that you were doing coaching as a part of the job, but that was you developing your skill sets. Right. So now you've done 70 plus, you were doing 70 hours a week. I'm like, I don't even know how you were doing that many hours, right? 70 hours of coaching a week. And hundreds of people that you've now helped. And now you have that skill set. So now you have that skill set. You can that you can create, whatever you want. And so, yeah. And so just understand, for people to understand too, it's like sometimes, again, it's just taking those steps. And then once you make that decision, then your pathway will start to be clearer. It's not always just right. You won't see it all right away, but as you make those steps, the path gets clearer. And even for me, right, my journey, like I started off kind of in the marketing industry, coming from, like, I've learned about funnels and ads and things like that. So I didn't really go into it specifically for coaching, right? But I just realized over time, I was like, yeah, I enjoy this, and this is something I can do for my business. But I really wanted to teach other people how to do that, because I knew there were other people like you and I who were wanting to be entrepreneurs, but maybe didn't know how to make that journey. So it was like, I would rather teach them how to market their business than to just only use this to market my business, right? And so, yeah, and so, but over time, that became clear of who I want to work with and who I want to help. And so, but yeah, so I mean, like I said, it's just so much value that you shared in there, and so I'm hoping people were able to pull some of those things out. But and so what, I mean, I know I've kind of mentioned a few things, but what would you say, like, some of your biggest challenges that you had to overcome, or like what are some of the mindset wise, and kind of when making that shift from being, I know you had this vision of where you want to go, but it's still, I'm sure there still was some mind shift that you had to make from being, a career to being an entrepreneur and actually kind of switching over to that coaching industry, even that with that first job of, starting to coach people. Were there any insecurities or things that you had to overcome making that transition?
Um, Good question. Well, one of them was definitely the mindset, the limiting belief, to overcome that greatest limiting belief, that, like, who am I to coach, or who am I to teach, or who am I to talk about these things? Um, Also, another one was along the path somewhere. That was also not very long ago, like a few years back, when I realized you only have to be a few steps ahead on the road of somebody else, so
Yeah.
that you can take them through just those few steps. You collapse time for them on those few steps, that where you are ahead of them in some things. And then, yeah, in other things they might be ahead of you, but then in other things you might be ahead of them. And this is true for literally every single human being all across the world all the time. So that's to mean, that we don't have to be perfect or
Absolutely.
have everything sorted. So that was, to me, that was a big mindset shift,
Yeah.
to relate to myself like that, oh, I don't have to be perfect, I just can be a few steps ahead on that same path. and
Mm-hmm.
and anyone who is on that same path, I can help.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge shift. Like you said, it's just yeah, because I think that's another thing too, is we feel like we have to already have all the certifications. We feel like we have to have all these things already in place and be perfect, before we can actually help people. But the reality is, if we can look back at even our own lives, right, 5, 10 years ago, and we can, if there's something that I can go back and I can teach that old Monica to help bypass, those challenges I had, then it's worth it, right? And you're helping
Yeah.
somebody. And so it's kind of like one of my coaches, she talks about, like, you having the roadmap. It's like, hey, I'm a few steps ahead of you. Like, I have the path, like, I've gone through this already. I have the path. I'm still on my journey. So I'm still not exactly where, I haven't reached my mountaintop yet, but I'm a hot couple peaks higher than you, right? And so, but now let me pull you up to this peak that I'm on while I'm continuing to grow. And so I think that's huge. That's a huge mind shift in helping people, just being able to understand, like, you don't have to be perfect, and you'll get better with time, right? So I'm
Yeah.
sure after you doing 70 hours of coaching a week, that your skills probably fine tune very quickly, right? Because
Yeah.
the more that you do it, the better you get at it, the more, and I think that's another thing. In the traditional society, we're taught that failure is bad or mistakes are bad, right? And in the entrepreneur world, it's a completely different mindset. In the entrepreneur world, it's like, no, those are lessons. So, like, let's not look at it as a failure, but what can we learn from that, so that the next time we do it even better, or the next time we show up differently, or whatever. So I think that's even another huge mindset shift that I had to make. It's just like, not is it's how I even look at failure or mistakes, or not succeeding, and just understanding, like, hey, that's a part of life. If you're gonna get better, then you got to practice. You got to, it's fail, try, adjust, fail, try, adjust, fail, try, adjust, right? And so, yeah, so even like I said, just having that different idea of even what like failure and mistakes look like, and shifting them to look at them as lessons, and that I don't have to be perfect, and but you get better with time, you get better with practice. So again, like you were saying, like 70 hours a week, that would, I'm sure that you probably had some bloopers, or, especially those first few calls. If you never, if you never coached before, I'm sure you had some instances where you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I could have done this differently. Right. And that's just reality, that we're humans, we make mistakes. And so I think, like you said, I think a lot of that's just that shift, that mind shift of just understanding, hey, I'm ahead, I'm not perfect, I don't have to be perfect. And I think that's the other thing too. I think when you can show your authenticity, and you can show like, hey, I'm here, I genuinely have a heart, because I from you, I hear that you have a heart. You have a heart to help people manifest the life and create the life that they want, right? And so I think when our authenticity shows up, then people know that we're here to help them. We have the best intentions. And I think that's one of the biggest things too, when you're going into coaching, is just understand you don't have to be perfect, but people will pick up on if you are truly there to help them versus you're just trying to get money from them or something like that. So I think the more authentic we can show up, the more that we can add value, and just understanding we don't have to be perfect, but it's, and I think that's part of, even when we go into that world, that desire to be perfect though is actually a good thing, right? Because I think it forces, like you said, you went on this personal, you've been on this personal growth journey. And I think that's one of the things too, is because we have this anxiety, like, oh, I got to be perfect, I want to help them, I don't want to make mistakes. Then we continue to go on our own personal growth journeys, which is going to help us become even better ourselves, to show up better for our clients and things like that. So we don't have to be perfect, but I do think it inspires us to continue to push to be better, so that we can truly add value to those that we want to work with and stuff like that. So yeah, so like I said, you so much value, Estee, so much value. And then I mean, so I know you had a chance to do my how to reinvent yourself as a coach challenge. And so like what are some of the things that kind of helped you with, in regards to where you are in your business, and kind of moving forward? Like were there any things that kind of you pull from that experience that you think would be helpful for somebody?
I think my favorite thing from that, like, I mean, it was really, really amazing. Even though, as you know, I didn't end up using all of the amazing things that I learned from you, but the ones that I do use and kind of became sort of part of my thinking, which I really love and appreciate, and I think it's very useful, is the way that you taught me about basically marketing and social media, like sharing, like how to put together like everyday things with what I would like to actually share about and think about. And that's, I never really thought about that in such a simple, straightforward way, the way that you taught me to do it. So I think that's my favorite thing. And it's so helpful when, you kind of are, you run out of ideas for what to post now. Or, is it like you don't want every single post to be so salesy, or you don't want to sound salesy, and you try to sell your services, because when you're a business owner, you have to sell your services. That's just the reality of it. And so one is that maybe I don't want to sound so salesy all the time. And then the other is like, okay, so I ran out of ideas of what to post now. And then your way of teaching that about social media marketing, and like exactly what to put in your post. And you gave me a framework, which is just very simple, straightforward, really amazing framework, which you can use literally all the time, anytime, when you don't have any ideas for what to post. And also it just makes, I think the way that you taught that to me, it makes posting about things much more like personable or personal, like where your true actual life is part of what you are sharing, that you're, so you bring authenticity
Exactly.
in that. And it's not just sales, it's actually you're showing that you're a human being, you have a life, and this is what you're doing also. like, I mean, the business and the, the services that you're offering, and to connect those two things. Like, yeah, that was my most favorite thing that I still use, and I find it very useful. And then obviously there was just so much other great stuff, especially about the niche, how to find the niche and the reinvention part and all of that. It was amazing, even though, I mean, I really appreciate it and I find it truly valuable, even though I didn't end up using all of it, as you know, and you also know my reasons for that. But yeah, so that's what I would say.
Yeah. And so and that's awesome. I'm glad you you share that value. And the thing is too, I know one of the things I learned early on, like I did network marketing for a while, right? And so you go to these like 3 day, like full day, like what time we would start at like 9, 10 a.m. until like midnight, 1 o'clock at night, like full day, maybe an hour for lunch or dinner, right? And so it would be so overwhelming. It's just so much information out there, right? And so one of the things that the concepts that I always took is you kind of think about going to the shopping. If you go to the grocery store, right? You got tons of products, but you pick what you need for where you are in your
Yeah.
business at that point. So yeah, so absolutely. I mean, there's like I said, even part of me trying to creating that whole reinvent you system is to help that new entrepreneur, because there's so many things out there. Like, hey, let's kind of streamline this so we can focus on the key things to help you get started, and not have so much distractions with all the other stuff out there. So yeah, so absolutely. So I'm definitely glad that you pulled some value out of it, because that's the whole idea, right? Everybody is at a different point in their business. And so, but it's like figuring, okay, this is what I need right now. This is what I need right now. And then you just kind of put it together based on where you need. So, but yeah, and I'm glad you even were able to see that authenticity, because that's the whole thing. I was mentioning is, and because that's another thing I think some people struggle with, is like you were saying, like, why will people listen to me? Why will people want to buy from me? And I think part of that comes from how you show up on like social media and your marketing, things like that. The more that they see you as a real person, the more that they see that you have some of the same challenges that they have, the more that they see that you are overcoming, that you're still making those strides despite those things, that you're still making successes, the more authentic you are, and that they see that builds that rapport, that builds what they call know, like, and trust. So when we think about like one of the books, I can't remember. I have all these books that I've read over the years, and I can't remember which book I got it from. But basically, it's like people will know who people buy who from who they know, like, and trust, right? And so the whole idea is that giving value, showing your authenticity, um, and that's going to help build the know, like, and trust, because they're getting to see who your character is. They're getting to see what your interests are. They're getting to see what your thought process, what value are you adding, and that's building that know, like, and trust to be able to now begin to move them through a process that you can now help them on their transformational journey with that, whatever. I mean, for you, I know it's manifestation. For me, it's helping reinvent themselves as a coach. But anybody kind of on that who is in the coaching industry, you're helping them make some kind of transformation, right? And so it's like, but in doing that, you first have to show your authenticity. You first have to show who you are. You first have to build that trust so that they know. Because again, coaching, we know you can get really deep, in some of these sessions, and people have to really trust you. They have to really believe that you have their interest at heart. They have to believe that that you are really there to help them, and not just try to, like I mentioned earlier, it's not just about the money. It's like I really, truly, genuinely want to help you get to this goal that we've set, or that you said that you verbalize it, right? And so, yeah, I think that's a lot of what I hope people are picking up, either, like I said, just, and I think a lot of that shows up in how we show up in social media and things like that. It's just how do we relate that so that people see the value. So yeah, awesome. Glad you were able to use that, and still be able to just use that as a part of what you're doing and continue to do that. So that's exciting. So okay, I'm glad you shared that. So health that's always, and I think that's one of the biggest things as coach too, is when you actually see that people are using the things that you share with them, and they're actually making progress, and it's helping them. So that's always, it's always helpful. Like, oh yeah, okay, cool, it's working. It's helping.
Yes.
And so that's always inspiring. So thanks for sharing that. And so I know we're gonna wrap up shortly, but I do want to ask if you had to give that new inspiring like entrepreneur coach, that person who's maybe wanting to transition from career to coach, like what's maybe your top 2 to 3 tips or whatever that you might give them where they are now in regards to moving forward.
Um, I think I would, number one is I would think about your big why. I think that's number one. What is your big why? Like to create that bigger context for yourself, because when you do, that will pull you powerfully into action. Anytime that you're not inspired, anytime that the going gets tough, if you have that bigger context for your life, your existence, and what is it that you're up to in this world, like what is it that you stand for, what is that future, what is that world that you stand for others and the world, what's that bigger context, and that will really help you through everything, any and every obstacle that you come across. But and and in addition to that, I would also add I would recommend, like if you're not clear on that, then probably maybe you're also not may not be clear on like what is your life for, and or what is it that you want, like what is that dream life, because I just know from working with a lot of people that a lot of people aren't quite clear on what is the big why and what is their life for. And so
Mm,
how to know what is your sole purpose, how to know what is it that you were put here in this world for,
mm,
what's the point of your life, so how to know that. And for that I would say think about, I would ask myself this question for years: what am I uniquely positioned to be,
mm,
do, and provide in this world? What am I uniquely positioned to be, do, and provide in this world? So what does that mean? Uniquely positioned, that means to factor in everything that happened so far in your life,
mm,
but in a very strategic way. So what happened, meaning your upbringing, your the society, the way that you grew up, and all of your biggest decisions, your biggest struggles, and your biggest passions, and your biggest interests in life. So take all of that, and as you observe those things, it's like all of these things point to one direction. All of these
mm,
things point to one direction in your life, where if you take all of those factors, then you get to, okay, this is what I'm uniquely positioned to be, do, and have in life. So like, for example, I'm just going to say an example, um, that I had these creative business ideas earlier in my life, which were just all about creative things, creative stuff. Um, like I I I did singing. I was a singer at some point, like professionally, like paid gigs and stuff like this. I had a band. I was a painter at some point. I had a large scale solo art show in the heart of London, just off Trafalgar Square. Um, I did some fashion modeling. I did all these creative businesses. But the thing is, eventually I had to admit to myself, like you have to be really honest to yourself with this. When you look at all of these things, like, and then you're just like, okay, but what am I uniquely positioned to be, do, and provide in this world? Like, am I uniquely positioned to be like a singer, an artist, or a fashion model? And the truth is, yes, I could do that. I could. But if I look at all the rest of my life, my biggest struggles, my biggest passions, the thing that I've been interested in since I was very little, right? If I look at all of that, modeling and art and singing is great, but I'm not uniquely positioned to be, do, and provide that stuff in the world. What I'm uniquely positioned to be, do, and provide is, I think, at this point, is this. Listen, I grew up in communist Hungary. And now I run a coaching business, run my own coaching business in the United Kingdom. I am the living, walking example that anything is possible. I am the living, walking example that miracles are possible. That's what I'm uniquely positioned to be, do, and provide in this world, not the other stuff. Like the other stuff is great, you know, like there's no like predisposition. There's no, I think we do have freedom to create exactly what we want. But again, I think the path of least resistance is, what are you uniquely positioned to be, do, and provide in this world, taking into account all that you are, all your greatest gifts, all your greatest passions, your greatest struggles, your, you know, like just all of that. Yeah. And like, by the way, right, as I am doing this work, as I am building my business, then it's amazing to see that there I can already see ways that I can bring all my other passions into this business. I don't have to do just part of the, like, do the singing, do the music, do the art, do the fashion modeling. Yeah, I can do all of those. I can bring all of that into this business. I can bring the visual creativity into my business by creating my brand, for example. Exactly. Right. And I can bring the music by creating videos which contain music. I was actually thinking yesterday, should I record like my own I don't know what you call that, sound bite, you know, those the brand sound thingy, like should I record that, like should I actually like start singing something and just, you know, share, well, I have this talent too, by the way. and the you know, the fashion modeling part, well, yeah, I get to model life. To be, when you're a coach, you're kind of modeling stuff, right? When you're a coach, kind of, yeah, right. So those are the two big things. And there was one more thing that I wanted to say, but I forgot what it was. So maybe that's it.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I think that's so valuable. Those are some awesome tips, and I'm just gonna let you know, I'm gonna borrow that. I love that. What am I uniquely positioned to provide, be, do, and, well, hold on, did I say right? What am I uniquely positioned to be, do, and provide in this world? And so I'm gonna give you credit for it, but I am gonna use it because that's awesome. I love that question.
Thank you.
So it really, yeah, it really speaks to, like, because I think that's, even when we talk about the whole marketing thing, it's like, how do you stand out? What is it that you can uniquely help people? Because I think that's another thing too, is people are like, oh, how nobody's going to listen to me, and it's all about positioning. It's all about, like, how do you create it so that you're unique, so that you stand out from everybody else. And so I think that's so awesome. So but yeah, it's so phenomenal. And so I know we're gonna wrap up.
Oh, sorry, I remembered.
Okay,
what was the other thing.
Go ahead.
So then when you are transitioning from, you know, job to doing your own business, or job to being a coach, the other big thing that I think was very helpful for me is to take every opportunity to volunteer, take every opportunity to give your gift freely to people, because that's going to have you practice, and that's going to have you become better and better really quite fast.
Absolutely. And build on that confidence too, because once you see that, you know, you can do, like, oh, I can do it. I didn't die.
Yeah.
I didn't, you know, so even just taking some of the steps that may be scary early on, it's like, oh, okay. Whew. And actually that's kind of how, because I actually did a post the other day, because for me, I growing up, I was like always the introvert, very quiet. And so, but I always knew I wanted to be in business, but I knew that I couldn't be this introvert and quiet and have a successful, a huge business, just being like kind of in the behind the scenes, right, and not, and scared to talk. And so but that's kind of because of that, I started putting myself in positions where I joined, like at church, I was doing the excuse me, I would do the announcements, right? I mean, something that nobody likes to do, right? But then I signed up to do the announcements. And so now I'm talking in front of a congregation of 100 plus people, on those Sundays. Or I've done, some smaller speaker things. Like I said, I was in network marketing. So I've had a chance, because of some of the successes I had, I spoke on stage in front of a couple thousand people a couple of times. But because of some of the positions I put myself in, now I'm like, oh, talking is really not that bad, especially once you kind of prepare and you kind of have an idea of where you want to talk about. So some of those initial fears and challenges that I had, I'm like, man, can I do that? Part of it just came from, positioning myself, to be able to develop those skill sets. And with that, the confidence comes, yeah, so awesome, awesome. And then, so, and we definitely cannot leave without you telling them how they can find you. So you've done all this wonderful manifesting in your life. And so if they want to know how to get better with, being able to manifest their own miracles, and I said that's like your book, that, have you already written the book, or are you still in the process of writing it?
I'm still in the process of writing
Okay.
it. I'm
Okay.
getting really close. I promised myself last December that the book will be published by this year December.
Okay. So you
So
still got plenty of time.
yeah, and I have been working on it, so I
Uh,
think I'm gonna get there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, make sure that you let us know when you get it done, and it's up and ready for, purchasing or whatever. But yeah, before we go though, please share, like, how, if somebody wants to learn more about manifesting, and where, how they can potentially work with you, how would they reach out to you on either social media, or if you have a website, or however, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Thank you. So both on Instagram and Facebook, if you search for Este Cann, my name, then you will find me. Um, on Instagram, it's just Este Cann. That's like at Este Cann, ESTECANN. And on Facebook, the same, but it's a different logo. But if you just search for my name on Facebook, you should be able to find me. Or obviously, if you find Monica, then I'm on her friend list
Yeah.
on Facebook, so you can find me through Monica as well.
Yeah.
I have a website. It's my name also. It's estecann.com. And if you go on my website, actually, I have two free offers at the moment, which is, one of them is an ebook. For free, you can have my ebook called The Science of Manifesting, which details you the 5 steps, the ultimate 5 steps to manifesting anything that you want.
Awesome.
And also the quantum physics side of it, like how this is not actually woo-woo. It's based in quantum physics. It's based on science, all right, the method that I teach. And so I don't know if wherever this video is showing up, can we maybe put the link somewhere around there
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I
people
was
can
gonna.
have my free offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'll just have you can send me your whatever links you want attached to it, and I'll
Okay,
make sure that
awesome.
we put it in the comments for sure, for sure, for sure. So
Awesome. And
yeah,
then
I just
there's
want to make sure
another.
that you could at least say it in the video, so that if they don't see the
Oh,
comments,
thank you.
they can still access it. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah,
Thanks.
we'll definitely. I'll just so yeah, forget. So guys, we will just kind of check out the comment section, and you'll be able to see the links there, or
Yeah,
again.
and then there's another free offer, which is, I'm also going to give you the link for that, and that one is a free masterclass, which is the quantum manifesting masterclass, which is about 2 hours long. So it's absolutely value packed. So either one of them, because whichever, people learn in different ways, and some people like to read, and some people like video or sound. So those are the 2 free offers that I would like to share
Awesome. That's
with,
phenomenal,
with
phenomenal.
the
Well,
audience.
Estee, like I said, I think it was so value packed today, and I hope those that are viewing this take so much, are able to pull from that, and be able to apply it to their journey, and just helping them with those mindset shifts and the courage, to go against all odds. Because again, with your, coming from, hungry, and your background, and then being able to just persist and be determined to make it happen, like you definitely have done that, and continuing to grow and move forward. So I definitely hope that that's been an inspiration for everybody viewing. And so thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you for coming out. And so we'll have to bring you back later after you kind of start to manifest some other stuff, and share with us some more of your what you've learned as a part of your journey. But I appreciate you, and guys, we look forward to seeing more of Este in the community. So, and feel free, if you're watching this, to drop your comments and let her see the value that you got from her story and sharing with you. So until next time, we'll see you guys on the Career to Coach Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So glad to have you.